Hi guys, it's Paul Sullivan again from Digital Bias, and today we will be talking about the power of websites within digital transformation. And with me, I have a former client, and I think we're friends as well, Victoria Barton Rosenthal, and she is the former head of marketing at Solace, and she's now in a new role. But Victoria, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, of course. So, as Paul has said, my name is Victoria, and I am a marketing strategist. I've worked across a range of sectors before, from retail, commercial in the private sector to startups all over the world. And then I made my way into the public sector, where I've been working for the past 6 or so years now. I have since moved on from the company that we're talking about today, but I am still very firmly invested in all things tech, marketing, and the public sector.
Perfect, brilliant. And Victoria, today I just want to keep it really conversational because, as I said before the call started, to anyone listening, I didn't get time to structure this. So we're just going to keep it conversational, and hopefully that will lead to kind of some dives into different areas. And so, just to let you guys know, when I was introduced to Victoria when she was at Solace was about 4 years ago, if I'm right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds
so
about right
it's,
to me.
so it's a 4 year relationship, so a decent length of relationship with a client. And you guys were about to enter some sort of digital transformation. And I'm going to hand it over to you now to kind of
Cool.
warm us up, and then we'll dive into it.
So it was a very interesting time. I joined Solace, and pretty much, well, a few months after I joined, there was the conversation of this whole digital transformation project. And initially, that was meant to start off with just replacing our two quite archaic CRM systems, if you can even call them CRM systems. However, we very quickly realized that the website was built off the back of one of these CRM systems that was, well, it was prehistoric. It was absolutely going to be defunct, and it was going to happen very, very quickly. So we were faced with the challenge of not only consolidating and updating our CRM, but also rebuilding this website from scratch, which actually, hands up, I was quite happy to do because the old website didn't look that great at all. So it was a great opportunity, but it was something that was really thrust upon us, and we had to go out fairly quickly to tender and to get things sorted out at pace so we could have a minimal downtime for this website being introduced. And I say, Paul, I can see you've got some of the old pictures. This is a blast from the past here. That gives you an idea of why we didn't recreate the look and feel here. It was clunky. It was very, very information heavy. It wasn't optimized in any way, shape, or form. And it wasn't serving a purpose for our members, but more importantly, not just people who were already within our network, for potential customers, people who were interested in the network. So it was a great opportunity to take something and really overhaul it, make it feel new and fresh. Off the back of that, there were some other elements within the digital transformation project, which happened after this lovely new website was built and created, which obviously you can see there is a huge difference here. We had quite a few people to please in terms of our internal stakeholders, but also Solace is a membership network. So we also had our customers, of course, to please, making sure that information was clear and accessible to the wider public. But there's also a gated area that sits on the site, which had some quite complex dependencies with our new CRM system that we implemented. And so it was, well, there was a lot more work behind it than maybe meets the eye, making sure that everything synced up. So on top of integrating the website and the new CMS system, we also brought in some marketing automation software via HubSpot. And so everything, we wanted it to be a seamless experience so we could really understand more about the people who were visiting our website, the people who were engaging with it, understand more about how they were connecting with it, so that we could give them the information they needed to make the decisions that, of course, clearly they were trying to make. So obviously the website was really a huge part of this puzzle piece here. And I think hopefully you'll agree, it just looks and feels so much cleaner, more modern, slick, really more of a timeless design in terms of something that has a little bit of longevity to it, which is quite important, I feel, in the world of web design, but also just really fit for purpose. But off the back of this website as well, we had quite a few other things going on in the works, and I feel like the website and these other integrations really got the wheels in motion for quite a few other things that we had custom built to enhance our user experience.
And just to jump in there, Victoria, to talk about before we get into the custom tools, when we kind of first started talking to you, there was this Fonteva
Yes.
events portal that could be built with a website on the front, but actually couldn't. And there was several integrations. There was like Fonteva, Salesforce, BullHorn. There was like some really complex stuff going on in the background. And actually, this website actually was designed to bring the organization together, right? It was replaced 3 websites, was it? Or 2 websites in the beginning? There was the events website, there was a main website.
There were lots of different websites. You're absolutely right. We had a separate website for event bookings, which I believe had been created as some kind of temporary measure because, of course, the old website couldn't handle very, very simple functions such as purchasing event tickets, which, of course, well, this organization runs a lot of face-to-face events. I think every organization now does a lot of virtual events as well, but the old website wasn't equipped for that. So it absolutely replaced the events website. It was really an amalgamation of all of our products and services, bringing it together in as tidy a package as possible. And you're right, there were some very complex integrations with some fairly inflexible styling of modules. But I think what we managed to achieve was, with what we were working with, certainly, I think you exceeded our expectations in terms of the end product that was produced, and things really did come together. It felt like more of a uniform experience, even though perhaps people were being pushed to a third-party integration for this final events purchase. It still looks and feels like it's part of Solace, which is important when you consider customer journey, customer experience. The minute a payment page changes, or the minute it looks like you're somewhere different, perhaps even inauthentic, people are less willing to part with those personal details. And especially in the world of local government, that's something that is taken quite seriously. So we needed it to look grown up, slick, professional, but feel cohesive at the same time.
And talking about local government and that level of professionalism, part of what Solace offer is not a recruitment agency, but they offer like a recruitment process to local government for senior leaders, right? And your guys used to outsource to another agency the design and build of essentially micro recruitment sites that reflected the same branding as, say, I don't know, Camden Council or Tower Hamlets Council down here in London, or wherever you are in the UK, you'll have some sort of local council that you can recognise. And we solved this problem, right? We kind of used WordPress to self-generate microsites based on, what was it, 3, 5, and 7 page templates, but were fully editable, customizable colors and all of that stuff, and then integrated that into BullHorn, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In the world of local government recruitment is a different kettle of fish, really, to anything I've seen. But a lot of the appeal, if you start to work with somebody like a third party recruiter like Solace in Business, the expectation is that there will be this little branded microsite, and that, of course, we're outsourcing to another agency to build those pages, those microsites. It was another cost, and of course, the branding wouldn't quite be consistent with our branding. As you've said already, it was more about the local authorities branding. However, so the time, the effort, the cost involved with that, having that produced by a third party, it didn't make as much sense. And again, we want to make sure that this whole experience is seamless, but also freeing up some time, some resource, and utilizing the resources that we had to the best of our ability. I think that WordPress offered us at that point in time a very good way of doing things, and enabling us to bring some of that skill set in-house, making it a little bit more of an easy and intuitive process to follow.
Yeah, and I think that this is a real good example of when, when we're working with you or any other clients, where we don't just think about like, what can we sell you? It's like, actually, I heard that you had this challenge, and we thought to ourselves, well, these guys don't need to do that. We can actually show them a way that they could have one cost up front, and then forevermore, for as long as you've website on WordPress, you just have this functionality that will serve the business. So it's like a one cost for a longer term saving. And I think this is a good example of what we try to do as a business, where we're fully focused on optimized environments, reducing costs, but providing the best possible functionality and users, so people like yourself can do their job. I think that's what it comes down to, right?
Oh gosh, absolutely. And what I will say is that also, from my point of view, being able to holistically look at that data as well, look at those analytics, it makes it a lot, it gives you a full picture, doesn't it? Rather than having bits and bobs over here and there, and it being quite a fragmented journey from an analytics point of view, it actually makes a lot more sense to have things that are held in the same place. But it really was about that kind of golden thread that ties everything together, and really looking at how we could be more efficient and effective in what we did, and a little bit of future proofing as well. So
Yeah.
absolutely did help us out hugely in the long run. And it gave us more control as well over our processes. So whereas before we were fully reliant on a third party to build and populate those microsites and edit those microsites as well, actually, it enabled us to be more responsive. So if a role actually had to be taken down, or a microsite had to be taken down, we had the power to do that at pace. If there was an error, a typo, for example, as sometimes is the way, human error, we could easily and quickly adjust that. But it also meant that actually, to a degree, we increased our capacity to be able to produce these sites, because it was such a simplistic process to be able to clone and populate the sites, that it did streamline services hugely.
Exactly. And just to kind of move on from that, because I feel like we covered that really well, but the one thing that we've taken from working with you and actually moved it on exponentially was the custom professional development platform that we developed for you. Basically the self-assessment tool. Why don't you give us a little bit of background about what the need was in this particular case?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody loves a good interactive tool to have a little play with. And this was essentially one of our hooks for people, to bring them in and it's a quiz, essentially. It's a little quiz that people take, but it churns out at the end a customized report of where people essentially could use a little more support in their local government careers. And the way this was built was for people at different stages in their career. So there are two different versions of this self-assessment tool, this quiz, and it's tailored to exactly where you are in local government, what stage of your career you're in. So if you're a chief executive, you're probably going to be answering slightly different questions to somebody who is on the National Graduate Development Programme, for example. So very simple. People populate their details in the form, and then they go on, they do the quiz, and say they get a lovely report emailed to them at the end, which acts as, I suppose, a starting point for them to take steps for their continuous professional development. And of course, there's always a tie back to how we could provide those services. But that was completely bespoke, a completely custom piece of work that Paul and his team created for us. Nothing like that had existed prior to this. In fact, there was a separate self-diagnostic website, but it wasn't as sophisticated as this particular model here, and it was clunky. It wasn't intuitive. This just really took a lot of the fuss out of things, and it also integrated with our HubSpot marketing automation tools. So again, we could see where the leads were coming from, and it allowed us to follow up more effectively and efficiently with those leads, or nurture people to take them down the path that they needed to go down.
And knowing like the infrastructure that you guys had, there's loads of companies out there that are split. They've got maybe sales on Salesforce, they've got marketing on the marketing hub from HubSpot, and you guys essentially ended up in some mix of that. And
Yeah.
how did this website kind of connect the dots between your offering and those platforms in the background?
I think it goes back to a little bit about what we mentioned earlier in terms of this really was the point that unified everything. The website really holds everything together in such a way that the customer wouldn't know that you were in a Salesforce part of the website, in certain parts of the site, and then in another part of the site they may be clicking on a HubSpot form that's embedded into a web page. They wouldn't know that. And you know what? I think that's the most important part, that for the customer, their journey feels seamless. It doesn't feel disjointed. It doesn't feel like it's not one and part of the same company. And really, that is what the website achieved. I think it really did create that housing for everything else in a way that looks and feels good and feels pretty intuitive as well to navigate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that assessment, Victoria. Feel like we've covered quite a lot, and that's a short version of 20 minutes or 4 years of work in partnership. And thinking about work in partnership, like quite honestly, how did you find Bias? How did you experience us as an agency? And obviously, we brought other agencies to the party with us when we started this project, so it wasn't just us. But collectively, how did you experience us and on our own as when the consultancies and the agencies were in play? How did we compare to them, and what's the lasting memory, I suppose, that we left with you?
Of course. So what I will say is, of course, a process like this, where you're working with multiple partners to tight delivery deadlines, I think it's challenging for everybody involved, because say too many cooks kind of thing almost. However, what I will say is, hand on heart, you were definitely the people that we stuck with. Full disclosure, we didn't stick with everybody else who was
Mhm.
involved in this project, because they overpromised and underdelivered. Whereas yourselves, on the other hand, you were always very keen to collaborate with us to meet our needs. So
Mhm.
from us being your client side of things, you were very, very keen to collaborate. But also you were keen to forge relationships with the other parties involved as well, the other third party suppliers.
Mhm.
And you definitely had our interests in mind. And there were always suggestions as to how to do things better. Why don't we try this? When certain things weren't working from the Salesforce point of view, from a Fonteva point of view, you were always very, very quick to provide support in that respect as well. And that aside, in terms of a working relationship, I mean, really, we had absolutely minimal downtime with the site. Any issues? We didn't really have any issues with the website. And if there were a couple of instances where the site was down, actually, it turned out to be some silly things, like a cable had been cut or something. I remember it's completely out of your control, but again, you did absolutely everything you could to get things up and running again. But I think we had an overwhelmingly positive experience, and I think with yourselves, it is very much a case of what you see is what you get. There's no nonsense. There's nothing to hide behind. You're not using magic tricks or fancy this, that, and the other. It's forthcoming. It's direct, but it's delivered well executed.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't know what to say to that. I'm not really good at compliments, so you actually shut me up. But yeah, listen, I love what we do here at Bias, and we're obviously fully focused on the best outcomes for all of our clients, yourselves included. You know, you guys were constantly evaluating the digital landscape. Do we do Salesforce? Do we do HubSpot? How do we go all in on this? How do we go all in on that? And I just felt like, you know, whether it was a HubSpot solution, whether it was a Salesforce solution, even if it was like a WordPress plugin solution, what we came back with was, look, there's 3 ways you can do something. There's the cheap way, this is the long-term way, and this is probably the optimal way. And so there was always that approach. And I feel like that's true to who we are. And I appreciate that you said that we're like forthcoming and direct, but deliver that well, because I feel like there's a lot of people in the world that like to throw buzzwords and catchphrases and all of that stuff to bamboozle you. And actually, when you get to the bottom of it, you're like, what did they actually just say? What are we actually getting? And I felt like we constantly delivered for you guys. And even today, with the ongoing relationship post your departure, there is still that sense of, you know, we've just done some training with some of the team, and for your relationships, things that you should champion. You know, there's not a lot of companies that do that. There's a lot of companies that churn a lot in 4 years, and so like we're grateful for that. And I'm grateful that you've come on today. You know, it's always difficult to just come on and talk about a case study, but you know, these are the things that make our world turn around, and hopefully you know, people that watch this can sense that there is, you know, a real true understanding of what a relationship should be, how you can use web within digital transformation, you know, deep connections, multiple apps in the background, optimizations, solving business problems. All these things went into this project, and I'm proud of it. And we actually won an award for this, I believe, most innovative web design agency back in about 2021, maybe somewhere there, somewhere there. Anyway, and that is really the best takeaway. So, we just want to ask you one more question. If someone was going to come and find you on LinkedIn and ask you, you know, what would you say if I wanted to go and speak to Paul and the team? What would you say to them?
Oh gosh, I would tell them it's absolutely worthwhile. I cherish the fact that we've had such a long relationship, in the sense that, as you've said, there are a lot of people out there who will talk the talk, but they can't necessarily walk the walk. And I would say that you are one of the few people that I've worked with whereby I would be happy to use you again, and I would absolutely recommend working with you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Once again, Victoria, thank you for coming on. I wish you every success in your career. Please do stay in touch, and I will speak to you soon.
Thank you very much, Paul.